Hello, Global Theater. My name is Jerry Fielka. Today is September 8th, 2024. I want to thank Rob Grant and his amazing podcast. I'm probably wrong about everything. Please subscribe. It's an honor and a pleasure to be here again with Rick Frankel for part two. We did November 24th, part one of last year. Can you believe that? Rick, where in the heck you calling in from?
I'm in Long Island City, New York.
Oh, how
which
cool
is which is New York City.
Yeah.
I'm directly across the river from the UN.
How cool. I know Long Island City.
Yeah.
So the first question, and we'll get into all that stuff we left hanging from part
I can't remember because we were supposed to meet and I got deathly ill and had to cancel. And that was like 4 months ago. So
well, you're better now and I'm happy. And we'll get into it slowly on those returns, but let's go with this. McLuhan said there's no such thing as a good or a bad movie. It's a good or a bad viewing experience. Now you could apply that to other, video games, codes, not just movies, any sort of art form. How do you process that quote?
It's about context.
Yeah.
Clearly. I mean, it's all about context. It's, he also likes to punch buttons. Let's face it. I mean, he throws these things out there and kind of sees who it sticks to, not whether it sticks to the wall, but who it sticks to is more important.
Who it sticks to.
Yeah, that's kind of like his approach. But I mean, as you know, historically, I love like what they used to refer to as grade Z movies.
Yeah.
Psychotronic, all that stuff. I like bad movies. So
yeah,
in general, so it's everything's about context in life, right? Yeah. An experience can be great one time and awful the next time, and it can be the exact same experience, but who you're with, who you're seeing it with, where you are, your mood. I mean, obviously with film, especially with any art, you project as much of what you are onto it as it affects you.
Yeah. That's what he called users content. And again, I just recall our times together 45 years ago in Ann Arbor. It didn't matter what we were doing. We were always wild and having fun.
And we saw a lot of movies.
Yeah, and we saw a lot of movies.
But I still tell people that. I still tell people, I don't know if I told this last time. It's so many months ago. I don't remember what I said.
Yeah.
But that, I said, well, gee, when I was in college, I had a buddy and we would see 8 movies a week.
Yeah.
Because we would see one every night. And on Wednesdays, you had a friend who worked at the ticket taker at the Michigan Theater, on the commercial theater. So we get in for free on Wednesday afternoons.
Yeah.
So so that's our 8 movies every week.
Good memory. Because I remember, if you do this, we were watching Frankenstein by Andy Warhol, producer, Paul Morrissey, director, big screen, and a frame burned, and it was just like and like, talk about a good experience. That was like visually something we'd be seeing in the Ann Arbor Film Festival, on the commercial movie setting or the popcorn theater, as I say it.
That's really funny because we just had dinner with friends last night, and they had gone. The Paris Theater is doing a 70 millimeter revival. Paris Theater being, Woody Allen's favorite movie theater. It's in Midtown Manhattan. And they're showing all these 70 films, and they went to see Remains of the Day. Not my favorite. I'm not a Merchant Ivory kind of guy, but okay. And like, they're halfway through the first reel, and they see like, and then they throw on the second reel. They didn't even try to rethread the first reel. And they're saying, what causes that?
Yeah. And
when you get to your question number 64, we'll reconnect with that. Because it made me think about that. Your question you sent me, number 64.
Oh, you mean light on and light through? Yeah, we'll definitely get to that.
Well, my response to that is all about this issue, because they're in their 30s, in their mid 30s, and so to them, why does that happen? Why does the frame burn? I mean, so anyway.
Yeah.
we'll get back to that one. But yeah, so
Yeah,
so I agree and I disagree. I mean,
yeah,
he's an absolutist. There are bad movies.
yeah. No,
There
no,
are,
and
but what you call a bad, well, not what you and me, but what
yeah,
someone else outside of us calls a bad movie, and what we call a bad movie are
yeah,
probably entirely different things. So
yeah. And actually, Marshall was against, or not against, but refrained from good or bad. Mainly, he said services and disservices, and he was a comprehensivist. Like, look at the big picture. But then you can still have your bias. Like he would say, don't say when you're with one or more people, don't say I love Facebook or I hate Facebook. When you're in your lonely teenage room, you can say I love Facebook or I hate Facebook. But when you're with one or more people, you want to suss out how is it shaping our behaviors so we can deal with it. So again, this is a friend of mine said the 3 T's of music are technique, theory, and taste. Now, applying it to everything we're talking about, you have technique. You can study how a instrument's played. You can have theory. How's the structure of music? How does one acquire taste? Again, not just in music, but in films or in coding. How does one acquire a taste?
well, clearly not through money. That I can tell you for sure. How does one? Yeah, I mean, I probably acquire. I mean, through my parents, my grandparents, probably in my case, more. My grandfather was an architect, and my grandmother was an artist. And I think I acquired my aesthetics because taste is about aesthetics.
That's what I was hoping you would.
Right. I mean, your sense of aesthetics. When you say your taste is about your aesthetic sense, and how you see. And I think I acquired mine through my grandparents, who would take me to museums and my grandfather was a Bauhaus trained architect, and so my taste tends towards what we now refer to as like mid-century modern, or that kind of or and then I grew up studying art was late 60s, and it was the conceptualists and the minimalists. So my taste again is very about cleanliness and stark and clean and sharp edges and that kind of thing. And I think it's cultural. It's because that's what I was brought up with, and that's when I was most involved in learning about art, that was the art form that most talked to me.
Yeah.
Which brings up another one of your questions that we can get into.
We will get to, because this is funny. First of all, it's funny when you said not through money, because I don't know if this person months ago was being satirical or not. I couldn't quite read it, but I says, how does one acquire taste? And it goes, whatever the rich people buy. And it was like, whoa. And you said the exact opposite right off the bat, not through money. But most people say experience and exposure.
Yes.
And
well,
that's what you pretty much touched on. But I also, like you said, cultural. What was the motive of the cave artist? Your guess or hunch?
Well, if you look at like Lascaux, for instance, like the hunting scenes, I mean, it was bragging. It was graffiti.
Wow.
Right? So, I mean, art, well, certainly visual art, there's kind of like that kind of visual art has like two main motives. One, I think practical art has two main motives. One is to brag.
Yeah.
Look what I did. Here's stuff we did. And the other, which is a personalized side of the main point, which is history.
Yeah.
So if you can't take a picture, you draw a picture of it. That's how they would memorialize something for future generations. So it's a memorialization of something, but to a certain extent, it's like, look how great we did. We took down this giant creature.
Yeah.
So there's a little bit of bragging in it. I think, people who make art, there's always a certain amount of ego involved in it.
Wow. Again, you're anticipating a question, but let's stay on that for a second, because graffiti is Herzog made that film about cave art, and he based it on a New Yorker article that said, hey, the cave artists invented 5 or 7 things. And one of them was blowing pigment, with your hand there, a stencil. And so the life expectancy for people then was 15 years old. So the people who invented art were teenage taggers.
Exactly.
Isn't that's really cool. But I love you saying to brag in history, because let's go into motive. And again, when I say art, I'm including everything that you do. Because here's the interesting thing I found out about spending that time with you, Rick, that was good. Oh, I wanted to be an artist. And then a guy told me, no, you should be a programmer, because I was a shitty artist. No, you're not a shitty artist. You're a great artist, because all artists are great. That's like Oscar Wilde saying bad poetry still has a lot of genuine feeling. Who's judging this shit? I mean, come on. So we know money gets involved, blah, blah, blah. But what I'm saying is, it's funny because we're going to go into this art and science. You sort of went, I'm an artist. I'm studying art. I want to curate art. I want to make art. And then you fall into what's the greatest art form now? Coding. That's all it is. Everybody's coding. So as a coder, you are an artist, that, but you don't go, I'm an artist, but I do coding on the side, So here's a couple things about art. Here's Milan Kundera, The Unbearable Likeness of Being.
Yes.
This is why I love writing, because the character that I'm writing about can go further than I can. So that's like, yeah, right. I'm going to take this pen, write a character on a piece of paper, and it's going to go further. That sounds too romantic or poetic to me. Let's be realistic. We're not going to talk of the paranormal. How do you process that line? I know it's metaphorical, but any things. This is why I love writing, because the character that I'm writing about can go further than I can.
Sure. I mean, if you think, all right. So I've been rereading maybe my favorite novel of all time, which is Underworld. And then, which is about, creating, it's not science fiction, it's in the here and now, but it is science fiction because he clearly creates a world. And then my other favorite, novel is Cryptonomicon, Gibson. And clearly Gibson is taking characters further than humanity is. I mean, that's the whole point of speculative fiction, right? And fantasy is that you create worlds beyond what we live in. And so I think Kundera, that it's a flip side of that same coin. You're creating universes that don't exist.
Yeah, that's good. In Underworlds, who's the author again?
DeLillo.
DeLillo, right? You're into all the Finnegan's Wake wannabe dudes.
Yeah, but DeLillo writes in essentially New York City street patois.
Yeah,
right?
Very cool.
I mean, his writing is like it's thought and word, because he writes like people think and people talk, whereas Joyce writes like aliens.
I disagree, because he says, so how'd you write Finnegan's Wake? He says, I didn't write it. The people over at that coffee house wrote it. So when you say New York street talk, that's DeLillo. But the other one is Pynchon, DeLillo, Gibson, and then I bet you like Gaddis too.
I haven't read a lot of Gaddis.
Okay. Anyways,
now I have to.
I'm not recommending him. I don't know. I don't read any of these guys. I don't know anything. But I'm just saying, I love that you brought up DeLillo, because he is very important. and Gibson's huge in this whole world we're talking about. But
Right.
here's the next one. And it's about kind of this motive behind these artists, behind all art. And then where's it go? Dante prayed to the muse to aid him. So is this, this is basically George Manupelli founded the Ann Arbor Film Festival like 64 years ago. His mantra was ignore yourself. Jonas Mekas says there is no self-expression. And Cecil Taylor says, I'm just a vehicle and this stuff just comes through me. So, Rick, is art making more self-expression or more you're a vehicle for whatever technologies, cultures, and environments are dominant?
Well, that goes back to the flip sides of why you make of the cave art.
Yeah.
Right. It's both.
Yeah.
Because everybody who makes art has a different reason for doing it.
Yeah, that's a good statement.
Right. There are norms, there are general groupings. I mean, there are the people who make art to feed their ego.
Yeah.
Right. What's his name? The stockbroker.
Coons.
Yes, thank you. Yes,
that other guy. I love that other guy. Everybody loves who puts the sharks in the British guy. Anyways, I know what you're talking about.
Damien Hirst.
Damien Hirst. You know what Coons sells now? I told the guys at the boardwalk. He sells skateboards.
That sounds right.
I was just like, dude.
But Richard Prince.
Yeah,
made the most beautiful surfboard in history.
There you go.
But so clearly someone like Coons, it's ego.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, his entire life is ego driven, right? So, but his art is very ego driven. But then you have someone, I do not believe that Gibson is ego driven. I think Gibson is a futurist.
Yeah, that's good.
And clearly, I mean, the whole kind of cyberpunk is his term, right? And Sterling also. These are futurists.
Sterling's another one, exactly.
Yeah, and of course, they wrote one book together.
Oh, I didn't know that. That's cool.
The Difference Engine.
Wow.
Which is about a future where Babbage's calculating machine. Basically, there's no electricity, and everything's built on Babbage's calculating machine, the very first computer, arguably.
Wow.
So, but for many artists in speculative fiction, let's not call it sci-fi.
Yeah.
It is about, it's McLuhan. It's looking at the future. It's I'm drawing blanks, of course.
But that's actually Martha Graham said, great artists aren't ahead of their times. They are their times. That's the amazing thing that Gibson and Sterling really are, but I got to jump back 1 second. My two favorite quotes in this regard are Al Flipside said, "Don't sell out, sneak in." Isn't that a great one? And then Paul Schrader, I'm really curious. Says the job of the artist is to attempt to sell out, but fail.
Yeah, well, in Schrader's case, that's clearly what happened.
Right, but in most
have you watched Blue Collar recently?
I'm in Blue Collar. I haven't watched it recently, but why? Is it good?
It's interesting to go back to it.
Yeah,
I watched it about a year ago because I wanted my partner to see it, and she couldn't get into it, but it's not easy cinema.
No, it starts with a Captain Beefheart song.
Yes.
It's Jack Nietzsche's soundtrack. We couldn't believe it. We were on the set in Detroit when it was making it.
Well, I remember that.
Yeah, and anyways, but here's Schrader. The comment Schrader says is very funny because most artists go, "That's cool," and then I says, "No, that's stupid. The job of the artist is to attempt to sell out but fail." That's like bragatory again, going, "My art's so pure that I tried to sell out but I failed. That means it must be so pure." And it's like, get over it. But Blue Collar has one of the greatest moments ever. It was when test patterns were flopped on the TV screen at the end of the night. So there was no 24-hour TV. They just put this test pattern on. And Richard Pryor's sitting there and he just says to his wife, I spent all my money buying this TV. I'm going to watch it even when the test patterns are on.
Yeah, people remember that. I used to collect at the beginning of films. We'll get back to this issue of actually having film.
Yeah.
Physical film. There were two things that they would put in the beginning. One was three things. There was the countdown with a test, often with a test pattern, so you could adjust the lens. And there was something that they referred to as a Sheila.
Yeah.
Which was a photo with all the color swatches in it, and you typically an attractive 20-something woman in the middle, right, surrounded by little test pattern stuff and color swatches, and to get flesh tone, and that was for doing getting your color correction right.
Yeah.
And when I used to show movies, I would often clip one frame out of those and collect them. Nice. So somewhere I probably still have stashed a collection of like 16 and 35 millimeter frames of these little test shots of the Sheilas, because I was fascinated by them. And the name, of course, comes from, it's politically incorrect now, but it comes from the Australian slang for a good-looking woman, which was a Sheila, right?
My God! Thanks for telling me that. So back to the ego thing, I wanted to ask you, in talking about, are the artists more a vehicle or more self-expression? And you said both important, but my follow-up question is always, can art making be egoless?
Probably not. I remember, okay, to put it into a context that I'm familiar with, there was a time I ended up with, after doing video games, I needed work, and I went to work as a programmer for this company. And there was this concept, and this must have been the late 70s, early 80s. And there was this concept coming out of Japan, of course, of egoless programming.
Wow.
And the people I worked for were really into this idea of egoless programming. And my attitude was bullshit.
Yeah.
Because if you don't take how can you take pride in what you do with no ego involved in it?
Yeah.
Right? And to really do anything creative well, and creative being writing, being programming, being, whatever it is. It's not necessarily art. It's any creative exercise where you have to invent and not just reproduce. Requires a certain, you have to take pride in it to do it well. Yeah. And how can you take pride and think pride is ego?
Yeah.
Right. That's one of the, the 7 deadly sins, right? Is pride. Yeah. Which is just a manifestation of ego. So I don't think you could do anything really, really well without taking pride in it.
Yeah.
And therefore that's ego. So yeah. I don't think any creative exercise can be entirely egoless.
Very interesting, because Bertolt Brecht asked Charles Lawton, why do you act? And he says, because people don't know what they are like, and I think I can show them. So this is, again, how do you form aesthetics and taste? Igor Stravinsky said, most people don't know what they like what they know. So we don't, that's a good one. What, any response?
That one's very clear. I used to always say about developing software for commercial use, and people don't know what they want until you show it to them.
Yeah.
And that was always like, well, we have a customer, they need this, they want this, they want this, they want this. It's like, no, I don't care what they want. Let's figure out what it is they actually need.
Yeah.
And then you give them what they need, and it's like, oh yeah, that's exactly what we wanted, but it wasn't what they asked for.
Exactly. That's what the symbolist poets who spawned all the rock poets. Mallarmé said, "Don't paint the painting, paint the effect you want to have." You paint the effect. So this is very interesting, Rick, because I want to go to Mike Kelly now, Michigander.
Yes,
Your reaction to this one.
I
Art
remember.
art is making your problems other people's problems.
Yeah, for him maybe.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's very Cal Arts, you know.
Yeah. But I mean, isn't it Woody Allen too? I mean,
Oh yeah, sure, of course.
yeah. But here's the poet
Of course,
Fanny.
but nonetheless, yes. I guess that's also very what's the correct word? It's kind of trite. It's kind of it's an it's an offhand comment. I mean, certainly he spent an awful lot of time making his work.
Yeah.
And there is all the I mean, my ex-wife was a brilliant thinker and a massive alcoholic and an artist, but she got sucked into that. You have to be an alcoholic to be a great artist. You have to you have to suffer for art.
Yeah.
Which was at a time the thing. I that's not necessarily true.
Yeah.
You have maybe a little bit. I mean,
yeah.
If you equate suffering with not having any money, then yes, I guess you have to suffer for art to a point, because clearly in nobody's going to pay you for it until you're found, right? And ultimately, I used to, it's like I used to say, I worked for a while at the New York Stock Exchange. There's a point to this. I mean, at the exchange in Chicago, and it was. I used to say going in there, I hated it because a friend described it. There's a huge pile of money in the middle of the floor, and there are 200 people climbing over each other to get to it.
That's it, definitely.
And that's kind of, so you do have to give up a lot to make a career as an artist, because it's like becoming an actor. I mean, I've known so many actors and bartenders and waitresses, and a few of them make it and become big famous actors, and the rest of them either spend their lives as bartenders or go off and do something else. So there is a period of, if you want to focus on a creative endeavor, there is a period where you have to give up a lot to do it.
Yeah, this is what people often say about Mike's quote: art is making your problems other people's problems. It could be art is making your joy other people's joy. So it's both. But here's one I'm always trying to suss out. Fanny Howe, she's a poet. The point of art is to show people that life is worth living by showing that it isn't.
I'll pass on that one.
Yeah, I'm glad. So here is no, that's all right. And I'm glad, because sometimes in part one you go, I can't answer that. I don't know. That's totally acceptable. Not saying you don't know. I'm not trying to trap you or
no. I know. It's just yeah.
No, that's all right. Here's a poet critic, Helen Vendler. She just passed away, and in her obit, I write to explain things to myself.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So I will, again, I'll put that back into a non-art context as software. People often say, I mean, everybody uses Slack, right? Slack, the software, I know you don't, but it's Twitter. It's kind of like Twitter for groups, it's like it's group messaging, but it's focused on businesses and on groups of people to communicate. And they said, and it's a common knowledge, the best software, and it's a good example of it, or is written by people who are scratching an itch.
What's that mean? Scratching image?
An itch, an itch.
Oh, scratching an itch. Yes.
Scratching an itch. And that's what this, I make art to explain, I write to explain things to myself.
Yes.
That software, as a creative endeavor, is really written by people who have a problem that they want to solve.
Yeah. Yeah.
And they solve their problem.
Yeah.
In a way that other people say, oh, I have that problem too, and I really like it.
Yeah.
We just, we just watched, Lindsay, I watched the movie Joy last night because it was on Netflix.
Yeah.
And it's about Jennifer Lawrence who designs a mop because she's wringing out a mop and she cut her hands.
Yeah.
So she solved a problem she had.
Yeah.
And other people have the same problem. So, and that's this idea of I write to explain things to myself. It's why people are journalists. And sometimes people's journals are great to read, and sometimes people's journals are so banal that they're awful. But someone who has a spark, what they write for themselves, other people are going to want.
Yeah, that's really interesting, Rick, because I didn't finish my thought. Advertising is create the disease and offer the cure. That's what, Poe invented the detective novel and then spawned the symbolist. But what you just brought up was, when I ask people, can art making be egoless? Most people go, no. But about a year ago, a woman said, great art is egoless. And then another woman a month later said, it has to be egoless. And that's what you touched on right there. What is that universality that a piece of art happens out? Like when Kurt Cobain sang, flannel shirt rock, and people says, that's what we want. Now then they went off and said, okay, go get us the new Nirvana. So he touched some little thing that was found a universality that people could tap into. So that's, the next thing I wanted to go into was this, Andre Malraux. He said art is to transfer destiny into awareness. I know, but when I asked you, can you forget to die? You like, I got to think about that one. So that's the funny thing, because, people don't know whether to take it metaphorical or literally. But here's the thing I wanted to go into is the word archive. So this is like 1400s, we invent this word to keep safe, free from harm. But it's 200 years later, 1600, when we decide that's what it's pretty much known as, a record preserved as evidence. But here's Charles Baudelaire. If you try to make a statement long, deep, and rich, it will age very fast. If you try to only own the day you're talking, it will last forever. In fact, David Lee Roth nailed it. He said, here today, gone later today. So, why do we have to collect all this stuff when the point of life is to be here now? Like Ram Dass, live in the moment. I mean, that's what we're doing right now. We're trying to live in the moment. In fact, Wyndham Lewis nailed it. He said, artists live in the present and write a detailed history of the future. The Egyptians saved stuff in their coffin with them. And then I love the futurist who said, destroy all the libraries and museums. Now, I go to a library every day, but I love that they thought up that idea. So Rick, is this need or want to archive more innate or more invented by humans?
Innate.
Yeah. And so do you
having to preserve things? It's like people are obsessed with doing genealogies.
Yeah.
My mother's family has been in America for a very long time, especially for Jews. And and certain people in the family and people adjacent to the family are obsessed with the history.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of people want to understand, it's like it goes back to your very first question is where do you get your taste?
Yeah.
A lot of people find it very important to understand where things came from.
Yeah.
Maybe even more so than where they're going.
Amazing.
I used to take a lot of photography, but I took it for the process. And so much so I'm not, I don't need to look at a picture to remember something I've seen, right? So I don't need that recording of it. If I can't remember it, it obviously wasn't that important to begin with. So
that's why I started curating a photography show at Venice Photographers, and I would just clip photos and make a photo montage out of magazine pictures. My friend says, dude, take some pictures. So once a year, I would take a camera and shoot my homeless friends at the boardwalk. I would make sure the lighting's perfect. And he goes, you're a savant photographer. I says, the reason I didn't want to ever do photography? I was like, why do I want to film something when I can live it? And that's what you just said. It proved it. It's the process of the photographing that was important to you.
Right. Well, but on the flip side, I got my partner into, when we travel, to take pictures, because taking pictures in an unfamiliar environment is a great way to look at that environment in a more detailed way than you would otherwise.
Yeah, that's right.
And it's you could use a camera with no film in it. It doesn't matter. The process of thinking about what are you looking at, and visualizing it in a way that expresses whatever you're looking at. That's what photography is to a great extent, right? That's certainly what documentary photography is. It's about trying to capture the essence of something visually.
Yeah.
And what representational painting is also about a lot, but I can't throw worth a damn. So it's that process of doing it leads you into many things that you wouldn't see others. I used to have another. I still kind of have. If I'm going to a big city or whatever, some place that I haven't been before, or whatever, I'll come up with some kind of obscure item that to me represents the culture of the place, and I will go and try to find the place that makes the perfect one of those. Doesn't matter. It's just some random, tchotchke or something, some item. And then you find yourself going to parts of the city that as a tourist you would never go to otherwise.
Brilliant.
You find yourself traveling to places and seeing things that you would never go to if you just looked at a guidebook and said, oh, let's go to see this and see that and see the other thing. Because you're going to go find areas that you just wouldn't go in.
Yeah.
The first time I did that was great. I decided, I saw the cops in Paris, and they wore these really cool, the motorcycle cops wore these really great leather jackets, right? These really cool motorcycle Paris cop jackets. So I said, I want one of those cop jackets.
Right.
And I had to find the place in Paris where all the motorcycle shops were, which was in some obscure neighborhood, right? That, as a tourist, you would never go into ever in your entire life, and talk to people and find the place where all the, find the place that was the original guys who made them, and they made them for all the, they invented it. And so you go to that place. And so you find yourself going through this whole adventure where you have to talk to people and go to places that you wouldn't do otherwise.
Yeah. It's really,
and that's that idea of discovery. And that's what, obviously that gets back to art, making art, this idea of discovery. So you have history and you have discovery, right, involved together. And that's where you end up with this kind of art that is about preserving things or expressing the past to go forward.
Yeah, that was really good, because you really got this idea of us exploring archive. We're making this film on it. And it's actually, I hope you come to Venice, California someday, because I always say you can have 1 million millionaire movie director standing next to a wino junkie and not tell the difference. But if you go to Marina Del Rey or Santa Monica, you can tell the difference.
Right. Well,
And,
that's very Manhattan, you know.
yeah, and so you can, yeah, that's who I'm going to quote next.
That's I mean, that's just, you know, that's Manhattan. It's like, you know, you walk down the street and you see bums and you see, you know, billionaires and
yeah, that's the joke. The winos in front of the fancy theater in New York, and the rich patron comes out, and the bum says, "Dude, can you spare a dime?" And the rich patron quotes Shakespeare, this great line that says, "Neither did I," blah 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 blah, you know, whatever it is. And then the bum goes, "Fuck you, that's David Mamet."
yeah, that's pretty classic.
So on to the great.
It's like a New Yorker. That's a New Yorker cartoon, you know.
Yeah, that is. So on to the great turncoat. This is Steve Martin loves to quote David Mamet. Art is the product of the unconscious mind. So you know, we're talking about the motive of the cave artist. In you know, why do we save this stuff? Everybody saves, but I have to go back. Actually, before you comment on that, I forgot to ask you: do you have plans for your own archive? You said, "Hey, I've got these 35 or 16 millimeter film clips in a box somewhere." Do you have any plan for your own archive?
No.
And do you feel that this stuff is like your loved ones are supposed to go trash it, or do you feel any like need or want to preserve your legacy?
Not really, no.
Yeah.
You know, I'm not a procreator. No, I don't. That's that ego thing again. This idea that you have to preserve something of you for the future. That's that one realm of art.
Yeah.
You
But
know,
that's amazing, Rick, because most of these people I interview, they go, "I don't, but I should," you know, because they have boxes of stuff that are important, research or whatever. But it's hard to get your archives, you know,
right, but
preserved.
you know, I mean, obviously, culturally preserving the past is important.
Yeah.
Socially and culturally, you know, because to some extent, I mean, again, the futurists would argue that that's bullshit. But on the other hand, you know, those who forget the past, you know, recreate it, right? I mean, there's certain things. I mean, losing cultural history is sociologically horrific.
Yeah.
But there's certain people who are better suited to do that than me. They're much more detail oriented I am, and much more organized than I am.
Yeah. But maybe you're free then of that, because then you're thinking about how can I preserve my past? I mean, that was the great thing about Zappa. He says, "I don't care how you preserve me." Yeah, or you know, how he kept an archive so he could use the stuff he was archiving to make his art.
Right.
But then once he died, it's like, okay. So now on to that Mamet quote: art is a product of the unconscious mind. Any comment on that line?
I mean, that's again. There are too many. I mean, there are too many rationales for making art. That, yes, for some people, clearly expressing inner unconscious is the point. That's the idea of I write to explain myself to myself, right?
Right.
You know, that's about exposing your unconscious in a way that you can comprehend. But that's just one approach.
Yeah. It's interesting because the question that McLuhan asked that we ended part one with, and you said let's do that in part two, is dealing with this. How about technologies as the collective unconscious and art is the collective unconsciousness. And it's really just, what's the difference between conscious and consciousness? So I just looked up in the dictionary, and unconscious is the part of your mind that contains feelings that you do not know about and influence the way you behave. Unconsciousness is the state of being unaware of what's going around you. So if art is the collective unconsciousness, is that they're tapping
unconscious,
in?
yes. Huh?
Yeah.
Oh, art is the unconsciousness.
Yeah, art is the unconsciousness. We're not aware of what we're doing.
Yeah,
So,
you sent that to me, and I'm a little confused by it.
yeah,
It's a little opaque for me. To me,
but can we know
technology is real? Let's pick different terms. Technology is about the archive.
Right.
Technology is about, instantiating things in a way that they exist and are accessible, right? That's what technology does. And that unconsciousness is about that creative expression.
Is the expression of it.
Yeah.
That's amazing. Is the expression of that. It's almost like the art is the expression of the not knowing what the technology is doing to us. Is that what you're saying? Because we want to think we know what.
I mean, not necessarily. I mean, art, obviously. Well, art and technology. Art is the exploration. Physically, art is the exploration of how to technology in directions that people never expected.
Right.
Right. I mean, all future-looking art. Well, future-looking visual art, because writing is a whole different thing.
Yeah.
Writing is much more self-contained at this point. I mean, obviously, early writing had obviously at some point was a new technology. For us now, writing is not a new technology. At one point, writing was a new technology, and being able to write things was creatively was an expression of what can we do with this technology, along with just the archiving things in the history and a way to communicate beyond oral tradition. But as you move forward, there's art that looks to the past. People still do oil painting, but at one point, paint was a new technology.
Yeah, exactly.
And so frescoes, was a new technology, his ability to put paint on a wall and it would stay there for a long time. I mean, it's very famous, Da Vinci invented a lot of new technology, but it was also very sloppy. I mean, the Last Supper was falling off the wall because he cut corners and didn't, he was experimenting with the technology of frescoes and not successfully. So a lot of art is about expanding technology.
Yeah. That's funny you said this, because I appreciate it, Rick. You're teaching me a lot, because we delved into a little in part one. What's the difference between art and science? And is science technology? Because here's what Jean Cocteau said. I'm curious your reaction. Art is science made clear.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I believe that. That's sure. It's made clear. It's humanizing it, right? The use of technology and all these things are very, ethereal to most people. They don't understand. I mean, there's the running joke. The theoretical mathematician convention. So people get up and talk in front of a group of 500 people, and everybody who talks, there are only two other people in that audience of 500 people who have any idea what they're talking about. Right? So that's I have this image of theoretical math. So art makes technology accessible.
That is good.
It makes it humanizes it, and it makes it comprehensible.
Yeah.
I mean,
That's good.
Cocteau is a true polymath. I've been to a lot of the south of France is full of Cocteau stuff. Chapels he did, and
Yeah.
work he's done. And there's a great museum of Cocteau, and I mean, it's just amazing to go look at his work and see what he was doing.
Well, you did what I strive to do and want people to do, is take an aphorism and expand on it. Just don't just say, oh, wow, that's cool. Like my friend said, Warhol said, in the future, everyone will be famous for 15 minutes. He said, yeah, in the future, everyone will have privacy for 15 minutes.
It's that much.
That much. But here's McLuhan. When we push our paradigms back, we get history. When we push them forward, we get science.
Yep. Speaking of the Warhol, what do you think what would he think? I can't imagine. I can't really imagine what Warhol would think of Facebook and Twitter and influencers. I mean, I guess he would adore it, but I guess he would also probably feel very jealous that they've stolen his idea.
He'd love it. I mean, it's all
he didn't love anything. He was so
well. You're right. I mean, he would probably dabble in it, because that's like Warhol did Finneganese perfectly. He's being interviewed, and they go, what's your motive in this art? And he goes, can I just go blah, 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 blah? And she goes, yeah, you can do that. So he's talking Finneganese. I mean, he was, an interesting person who took Duchamp and said, hey, I can live Duchamp. That's my opinion. He didn't really do anything different than Duchamp.
Yeah, I see that.
And that's good. I mean, I think he's important. And that last documentary on by Netflix is amazing.
Okay.
4 hours. Yeah, 4-hour doc on Netflix. You got to see it. It's disguised as about Warhol and his lovers, but it's way deep. But here's a couple other. Chomsky says we learn more about ourselves from literature than from science.
Okay.
You think that's you would say that's kind of accurate or not?
But science expands our possibilities. I don't know that it teaches us about ourselves. I mean, it teaches us about the world around us. It doesn't teach us about ourselves.
Right.
With Chomsky's a semiotician. So it's about, signifiers and symbolism. And science doesn't teach us about that.
Wow.
It doesn't teach us about culture and teaches us about the world, not about ourselves, I think.
But that's interesting, Rick, because Arthur Clarke said any sufficiently advanced technology is indistinguishable from magic. So correct. I mean, basically, he's saying
which is that's a very classic quote.
Yeah, but he's basically saying, that the things we invent can be magical. I think that's what he's saying.
No. I think it's more that we see the things around us based on our own experience. And if somebody pushes science far enough, our experience is not caught up to understand it. Right. And as humans, anything we don't understand, we think of as somehow magical. And that's the dichotomy, between us, our thinking and science. Science moves fast. Great scientists take leaps that we can't quite understand yet. And as cultures, if we can't understand things, we need a way to explain them, and one way to explain them is they're magic.
Amazing, because here's Warren Ellis rewording Arthur Clarke's aphorism. Any sufficiently advanced civilization is indistinguishable from its nature.
Oh, that's interesting. I thought it was going to be indistinguishable from gods, I would say, but I was thinking,
Wow, you were in.
that's what I was expecting the punchline to be.
That is cool, Rick. Would you say a small G or a capital G?
A small G.
Yeah,
I don't believe it. Capital G doesn't. It's the Coca-Cola bottle.
Yeah,
Cargo Cola, right? The Coca being gods must be crazy.
God must be crazy,
right? And the idea of cargo cults, right? Some science, something outside your understanding falls out of the sky, and you have cargo cults. The Aborigine with the Coca-Cola bottle and the gods must be crazy, which is the most well-known example of cargo cults.
That's good, because you brought up Bruce Sterling. He reworded it: any sufficiently advanced technology is indistinguishable from its garbage.
Oh, I like that one.
Isn't that great?
I miss who said that?
Bruce Sterling.
Oh, Sterling. Oh, of course.
Yeah.
Of course. I'm a huge fan.
But what's the difference between mystery and magic? Because here's Einstein. The most beautiful thing we can experience is the mysterious. It is the source of all true art and science.
So, mystery is the unknown, magic is the unknowable.
Oh, mystery is the unknown, and magic is what?
The unknowable. Magic is like, it's like God. Yeah. It's where belief takes over from science.
Yeah.
And rationality, right? It's like, the whole idea of these, there's the flying spaghetti monster, right? There's this all-seeing, all-knowing creature that you can't see, but it exists and it's controlling you. It's like, and that's magic. And that's, to me, garbage. Whereas mystery is something you simply haven't figured out yet.
Yeah.
So
you are really smart. You're teaching me a lot, because Auden the poet said that the mystery of art is that we don't know it if it activates or pacifies us. So, we don't really know. We want to romantically believe, oh, art's good and it helps us. It might be just chilling us out, chilling us out so we're not paying attention. It's like the difference between entertainment and education. What is the difference, really? You can learn a lot from watching stupid movies, and you can learn a lot from reading classic literature.
Right.
So that's we'll go to one more is this Paul Veyne. I'm a French archaeologist and historian. Science finds no truths. It discovers unknown facts that can be interpreted 1,000 ways.
Yes, but. Yes, but. Well, I mean, the misunderstanding of the term theory. Science, right? In other words, people who are Luddites. Oh, you said that, but it's just a theory. But a theory in science is not like, oh, that it's beyond just something you believe. In science, a theory is the best possible explanation for something that is real.
Yeah.
And a true scientist scientists don't believe in facts per se, absolutes. They don't believe in absolutes, because anything can be disproven the next day. But you have to build a model of your universe that allows you to exist in it, and you have the best and scientifically you have proofs of theorems, and there are best guess, and they seem to match the reality, and they fit. And every once in a while, you have something pops up, quantum mechanics or string theory that throws half of it out the window. But the rest of that stuff is still viable because our feet do still touch the ground when we walk, right? Gravity does exist. The world is not flat, although there are people who still believe that. But the best models of what is around us say it's not.
Yeah.
And beyond, and that is, so that's why yes, but.
That's good, Rick, because Lily Tomlin says reality's a collective hunch.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, here's the question though. Rick, is perception reality?
No. Well, I mean, it depends on what you call reality. Reality, all right, let's go back, the red pill, blue pill. Reality is a shared belief, a shared understanding of what is around us.
Yeah.
But everybody's perception is somewhat subjective.
Yeah.
The question I did want to answer is, I'm a hyper rational person, right? I mean, I have to make connections between things, and my view of the world is based on having logical and rational connections between things.
Yeah.
Which is why, the idea of God doesn't work for me, because you have to accept something that there's no proof for.
Yeah.
And there's no logical way to get there. And I can't accept that. I have to have these logical connections to things. So I accept what is around me is reality, and that my view of it is reasonable and rational. But it is my view, my perception of it. So,
because did I read you, Harold Bloom says, I'm not an atheist. My attitude towards Yahweh is that I don't like him and I don't trust him and I wish he would go away, but I know he won't because he's built into our language. And then he says, because as Nietzsche said, he's part of the way we think. As soon as you use a verb involving being, you're in trouble. So even though you can't prove there's a God, he's so built into our language, people use his word like he does. So then
correct.
if you acknowledge
absolutely. I mean, that's that difference between, well, that's that shared reality. If it's a shared, that's this idea of is perception reality. It's a shared perception. Therefore, culturally, it's a reality, and it is a basis that people use to communicate with each other.
Yeah.
So whether we're plugged into the machine, into a bunch of pods or not, and we're sharing this consciousness, and it is part of what we share to some extent. And I'll put it this way: the idea of God is built into our.
That's it. That's what he's saying. Yeah. The word, the idea is
the idea. I think, and if you're rational, I think the reality is bullshit. It's something we've invented. It's magic. It's something we've invented to explain things that bother us, that we have no rational explanation for.
Right. It's
like we don't. It's Clarke's difference between mystery and magic.
It's great.
We create magic to explain mystery, to account for mysteries that we are yet unable to explain.
It goes back to Auden saying the mystery of art is that we don't know if it activates or pacifies us. Bertolt Brecht says, I don't want art that puts me in a trance. I want art that activates me. But dude, you know what? If you go into a trance, you might get activated. You might go to a Grateful Dead concert and have an epiphany and you're in a trance. Or, so that's the funny thing, is that you can flip that trance-like thing that you're saying, oh, I don't want art that puts me in a trance. You could flip that into
But you need
real.
both. I mean, you
Oh,
know,
yeah.
you need both. If um, you need balance, right? If you're totally manic all the time, all your neurons firing, it's too much.
Yeah.
You sometimes need to turn off
In
your
Ann
brain,
Arbor,
and the trance type stuff helps turn off your brain.
yeah, in Ann Arbor 50 years ago, we were hyperactive on full blast all the time. Now 50 years later, we're chilled out.
Yeah, well, I wish. Except I used to actually be able to sleep then.
Give me some pizza and a new Frank Zappa album. So here's the one thing you said about hyper rational in your little note was, look up mirror neurons. So is mirror neurons like, I'm trying to learn it, so teach me deeper, please, Rick.
So
Is that like,
that's the opposite side of being hyper rational. So hyper rational is spectrumy, right? It's like they don't refer to ADHD. They don't refer to Asperger's anymore. It's the spectrum of thought, right? What we refer to as Asperger's is all part of this spectrum of way of viewing the world. And hyper rationality tends to be on the edge of that, what they used to refer to as like the Asperger's kind of thing.
Yeah.
The other side are extremely emotional people who experience the world through emotion more than they do through thought.
Yeah.
Through thought. And I joked that, my dog and my partner have too many mirror neurons. And mirror neurons are the things that let people who are on the spectrum don't necessarily recognize other people's emotional states or their emotions or their feelings, right? Because they don't recognize our own to a certain extent, right? Whereas people who it's a theory, to me, mirror neurons, most of their experience of other people is through an emotional connection as opposed to a logical connection. And their experience of the world is through the emotional response to the world rather than this logical deductive response.
Right. Because you ever study or about neural linguistic programming, NLP?
Yes.
And it's like, it was like cokeheads who learned a lot from anthropology and mainly Milton Erickson, the hypnotism guy, the guy who knows the most about hypnotism. But it's like you're at a job interview and you mirror the body language of the guy who's interviewing you so you can get over on him. And it's an act of persuasion. How do you persuade this guy to hire you?
Right.
So that's what it reminded me of. Mirror neurons was copying others' actions. That's what it says in Wikipedia and the dictionary. And
right. Well, it's not necessarily. They call it copying, but it's this idea of experiencing other people's emotional states.
Yeah.
It's not necessarily copying them as much as it's experiencing them, right? It's like you people who have that connection pick up a lot of other people's emotional states.
Right.
And kind of experience things through that connection as opposed to the logical. The flip side.
But then how did you react to that Larry Jordan? Human beings conduct their lives from much stronger sources than the rational mind.
Which doesn't, to me, as I say, to me, doesn't make a lot of sense.
It doesn't make sense, yeah.
Because to me, I experience everything through a rational understanding of it. That was the hyper rational versus too many mirror neurons kind of thing.
Yeah,
I experience things through a rational experience. I don't tend to not experience things through an emotional as much as through the rational.
What's more important, conviction or compromise?
I think it depends on how old you are.
I've had that answer, Rick. That's good. My friend, this guy in Ann Arbor was great. He says, depends on what you mean by important. The emphasis is, you know what, you want to guess what 80% of people say?
Compromise.
No, that's amazing. I'm shocked because I want to hear people say compromise.
I'm
But
terrible at compromising. So,
yeah,
I do not deal well with authority figures. I still don't. I didn't, and I still don't. When somebody tells me no, that's a reason to do it.
yeah, there you go.
And it still is, So
But you've accomplished a lot. How do you rate these three elements? Luck, skill, and ambition. What played the biggest role, second and third, in your accomplishments?
oh, I would say other people recognizing my skills.
Wow, is the number one. Yeah, that's good.
I'm not, I did have ambitions. I was slightly ambitious, but I'm very bad at following through on those things. That's
Yeah,
kind of like the ADHD kind of thing,
yeah.
The hyperactive, I had ambitions, but everything disappears very quickly. And luck, I don't know. I don't know about luck in general. I mean, I guess it's lucky if other people recognize, but
Yeah.
but I would say that other people recognizing my skills is the biggest.
It's great, Rick. That's one of Zappa's greatest um, traits, was that he would pull out of people stuff they didn't even know they had in them.
Yeah.
It's a really good trait. Okay, so tell me one major element of Rick creativeness that stayed the same and one major element that's changed. You can put it in any context you want, your creativeness.
I don't know. That's a hard one. Well, I mean, I think, my number one skill is to absorb things, remember them. Basically having good eidetic memory. I used to joke that my number one skill as a programmer was I could actually read the Unix manual and understand it.
And that's what stayed the same. Your memory, your comprehensive.
Well, it's not as good as it used to be, but yeah, my ability to assimilate information. Right?
Yeah.
The Borg thing, that's my skill.
What's the one thing that's changed over those years?
My long-term memory.
Well, that's almost, again, you have major ESP. Here's the next question, Rick. Moshe Feldenkrais, he works with healing and movement. He says it's literally possible to identify a weakness and incorporate it to become a strength, rather than we're normally taught to overcome a weakness. Tell me a weakness you turned into a strength.
Oh, God, I have no idea. I have no idea.
That's fine. Fill in the blank. Anger can be a productive emotion when
you don't direct it at other people.
Duh, that's beautiful. What's the most significant difference between men and women, physical aside?
I think saying men and women is the wrong words. I think it's masculine versus feminine, and I think we both encompass both of them.
Yeah.
I think the biggest difference is it's that rationality versus emotion.
Wow. Yeah.
Feminine side is the feminine is I think the greatest skill of the feminine side is to be able to connect to people on an emotional level, right?
Yeah.
That's why women are so much, why I'm going to be much happier with a woman president, because she's going to be less likely to, swing it and more likely to compromise and to try to reach consent, not necessarily compromise, but reach consensus.
Yeah.
Whereas that more aggressive masculine side is pushes things forwards more. But I don't think it's male and female. I think it's masculine and feminine. I don't think your sexual expression is related to that in as much as some people would like to think.
Dude, that's what it's really me and you versus the wording on the question. I'm always welcoming changing the nouns and verbs in my questions. And I really want to change that now to say feminine and masculine. What caused matriarchy, or what caused matristic civilizations?
The men were all out hunting and getting killed.
Yeah. And the flip is the women were giving birth.
and creating culture and society. They're holding society together. I mean, that's always been the case. Women hold down the home front, hold down society. Is in early civilizations, the society was created by women because the men were too busy trying to survive.
Yeah.
I think that changed with agrarian civilization, right? Once we went from hunter-gatherers to raising food, that flipped the switch, because then the guys were all home and bored, so they had to swing it.
You said it in part one. You said, when you said the buggy whip, that's McLuhan or Maria Gambudis and Rian Eisler. We've studied this deeply, matristic civilization, and it's the horse changed everything. Well, the horse in farming changed everything, but it was when you got the stirrup on the horse and the buggy whip. Look out. So, Rick, there's a line that goes, "You create what you resist." Bob Goldthwait said, "You are what you hate." James Joyce said, "It's a curious thing how your mind is super saturated with the religion in which you say you disbelieve." And Buñuel nailed it. He said, "Thank God I'm an atheist." How do you react, or what's your thoughts on this line? You create what you resist. Not you, Rick, but one creates.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that's the idea of the creative process of being a response to your experience of civilization and culture.
Yeah.
So that's just another way of saying people who are driven to create are driven by something, and often that is the external effects of the world on them.
Yeah.
And so it's in some cases it's a response to not being understood, having to express yourself through art as a response, maybe a response to not being understood in other ways. So so it's another way of saying that, I think. I don't disagree with that.
Rick, we got about 10 and 15 more minutes. I appreciate your time. A couple more and we're out of here. Here's Alan Watts asked 5 questions just off the top of your head in a couple words. Number 1, who started it all?
Spontaneous. It was spontaneous generation.
Spontaneity. When I worked for George Carlin, we got a flyer in the mail. I'm trying to get more control over my spontaneity.
Yeah.
Okay, number 2. That was good. Spontaneity. I love that. Number 2, are we going to make it?
Ask me next December.
Woo!
End of November.
Okay, Rick, we're making an agreement. We'll have part 3 then.
Okay.
Here's number 3. Where do we put it?
We pass it on.
Beautiful. 4, who's cleaning it up?
Hopefully someone.
Hopefully. 5, is it serious?
I'm not.
You know, Zappa
Is,
said,
is,
he said,
I,
I'm very
is,
serious
it,
about.
is it serious? I hope not.
I hope not. Yeah. Frank Zappa said, I'm very serious about being not serious.
Serious, yes.
I hope not. I like that. Okay, here we go. How do you find peace of mind?
I'm working on it.
Working on it. If you were walking down the street today and you met yourself as a 12-year-old, what would you say to your 12-year-old self?
Oh my God. Travel more.
That's good. Which way should toilet paper come off the roll, over or under?
Okay. Well, there is a correct answer because someone actually found the original patent for the toilet paper roll. And in the original patent, over the top.
I know that. I say that all the time. You're the first person who's told me that. But there are 90%, 95% say over. But 5% of people say under, and they have their reasons.
Drives me nuts. I turn it around every time.
Utah Phillips says, anarchy is making rules for yourself and not other people. Who's entitled to make the rules?
Rules should be consensus based.
Yeah.
No one should be entitled to make the rules.
Love it. In fact, the word freedom etymologically means making oneself one's own rules. What does freedom mean to you now?
Again, I'm working on it.
What's the difference between rights and responsibilities?
Your belief in others.
Yeah. There's a socialist, John Basil Barnhill. He said, where the people fear the government, you have tyranny. Where the government fears the people, you have liberty. 2005, V for Vendetta, they paraphrase that quote. People should not be afraid of their governments. Governments should be afraid of their people. How do you personally handle false fears like the war on poverty or the war on terrorism, or the classic is the war on drugs? You can't have a war on drugs because drugs don't fight. You can't say no to drugs because drugs don't talk. So this idea of false fears, how do you personally handle them?
I rant a lot.
That is good. That's one of my key skills is ranting.
I think we have that in common. Yeah.
Did we rant to each other, or did we just sort of consciously rant together? I mean, it's hard.
Unconsciously, I don't know. That's what I do now. I read the news and I rant. It's how it's my release, you know? It's like, you know, so.
Well, I'm going to send you the links. I just opened for this great Zappa cover band, the Stinkfoot Orchestra, and I did a 30-minute rant once and a 45-minute rant another time. And it's all these Zappa heads waiting for a concert. And you know, I go on before, but well, the first one I got heckled, and I sort of like didn't know how to handle my heckler. But I would love to get your feedback on my rant so you can critically break them down. Okay, if a publisher was to release your autobiography off the top of your head, what would the title be?
You'd have to ask my partner because she would probably name it. She would probably give me the title.
Okay, they want to scent the glue and the binding. What smell?
Oh. Vetiver.
What is that?
It's a scent, vetiver.
Vetiver.
Vetiver. Yeah. It's my favorite scent.
Very cool.
It's calming.
If a statue was built in your honor, where would you want it displayed and what would it be made of?
What would it be made of and where would I want it to be displayed? Ooh. I guess made out of glass and displayed underwater.
Very good. Tell me something good you never had and you never want.
Kids?
Dude, you know who said that?
Hmm.
Mike Kelly, same thing. They're good, never had them, never want them. If you were in a vat of vomit up to your neck and someone threw a bag of shit at your face, what would you do?
I'd rather not think about the situation.
That's actually, Rick, that is one of my favorite answers in 40 years. Guy goes, I wouldn't be in a situation. But I wish you could have met the guy who taught me that.
Okay.
He was an Altacocker on the Venice boardwalk, and he was just like this wise old man that I had so much fun with. And he taught me that question because it's kind of like a metaphor for life in a way.
Yeah,
We're on the vat of vomit and they're throwing bags of shit at our face.
Okay. Well, one of these days I could be that Altacocker on the Venice.
Hey, we could start the Altacocker ranting club. What's the cultural shift you see developing today that inspires you?
Oh. Again, ask me the second week of November.
Very good. What's a question that remains unresolved for you?
A question that we say, what do I want to be when I grow up?
Oh my God, I love that question. I want to write that down so I don't forget.
Every job interview ever, where do you see yourself in 5 years? It's like, I don't know where I'm going to be in 3 months. How would I know where I'm going to be in 5 years?
In like you're in my friend spent a year training how to do the Google job interview and he got it. So it's like, wow, yoga, basketball, sushi, but ride my bike to my job, blah, blah, blah. Anyways, how has your career in computer programming shaped your behavior?
I don't think it shaped my behavior. I think my behavior is and it's a fit. It's not, it's symbiotic.
Yeah. It just fit in with your general scheme, you're saying, or your attitude or your lifestyle?
It just fit with my brain.
Fit with your brain, yeah. But it goes back to that interesting thing you taught me. The computer guy I interviewed said, yeah, when Bell Labs started first making code, they went to musicians.
Well,
the code was good. Now the code sucks because they don't go to musicians to write code.
Right. It's that right brain thing, the overlap between musicians and programmers.
Yeah.
I mean, I worked for a while in Silicon Valley in San Francisco. And I mean, so many bands made up of computer programmers.
Yeah, that's what you said. But I think really you're aware of corpus callosum, the space between the right and left hemisphere. and you would say, "Hey, dude, I'm linear. I'm hyper rational. I'm left brain."
I'm not linear.
But that's what you're. I think you're able to integrate the right and left
I,
half.
I well, I always wanted to have the the separation thing.
You wanted.
Oh yeah, that where you could where the two where you separate the two hemispheres and you could like have two thoughts simultaneously.
Yeah, well, that's what I'm saying. You know how to integrate them.
Well,
That's
I mean, I think part of it for me is I was naturally left-handed, and my mom, for her warped social reasons, when I was in my crib, would take everything out of my left hand and put it in my right hand. And we
wow.
once that so to try to train me to be right-handed. And I was basically ambidextrous, so it didn't matter to me. I used to throw a baseball left-handed, but I got somebody gave me my first baseball glove and it was a right-handed mitt, so I started throwing the ball right-handed. And we asked my mom, why did you keep putting things in his right hand? I didn't want people to have to remember to seat him on the end of the table at dinner parties.
Wow. That's heavy.
But so I think that's why you see that, is I think I was always a little confused.
Yeah.
Laterally, but I'm not a linear thinker. I think what makes musicians good programmers, and I think what makes me a good programmer is I see things in gestalts.
That's the key word you said. So Rick, that's
I
probably
see,
your
so I see, I see
picture.
a cloud, I see a picture of things, and then you can follow, so linear thinkers make very good managers, they make very bad programmers.
Yeah.
Because yes, writing a program is linear. You have step by step by step, but to be able to comprehend a program in its whole, you have to see the whole network. You have to see the network,
The big picture. I would say that's your answer. You just answered what's a weakness turned into a strength is that you're people claim I'm left brain or hyper rational, but I'm actually both. I flip that into understanding that the big picture is more important, that the gestalt is where it's at.
Yeah. I'll go with that. I'll accept that.
Okay, two more and we're out of here. This is Thornton Wilder in 1928. Art is confession, art is the secret told, but art is not only the desire to tell one's secret, it's the desire to tell it and hide it at the same time. You've laid your cards on the table for over 3 hours. I'm not insinuating you haven't already answered this. What's it really all about for you?
I've given up on that question.
Yeah, that's good.
I mean, I'm turning 70 in a couple of months. I'm like, I don't think I'm looking for that answer anymore.
It's good. Very good. No one ever says that. Rick, that's beautiful. What gives you the most optimism?
My dog.
Oh, that is sweet. One time I asked someone, what's the best thing for a human being? The question I start with, and they said animals because this relationship. So that's funny because the first question I asked in part one is, what's the best thing for a human being? Wilhelm Reich said the best thing for a human being is another human being. And the last question I ask is, what gives you the most optimism? That's what they asked Groucho Marx at the end of his life. And he said, other people.
Yeah.
So it's sure been fun.
But I'm not overly optimistic about again, ask me November 7th, I'm not, these days I'm getting more optimistic recently, but I have not been very optimistic about the human race recently. So,
well, there's a couple good lines there. They asked Gandhi, what do you think of 21st century civilization? He said, good idea. And then they asked McLuhan, are you more an optimist or a pessimist? He goes, I'm an apocalypse. We're fucked. And he didn't really say fuck, but basically he knew the etymology on the word apocalypse means to reveal. So it's sort of like We're the Toto dogs, the atomic dogs, Toto pulling the curtain back. You know, you taught me transforming the Wizard of Oz to the Wizard of Us. And then you taught me last time transforming it to the Wizard of Ux, UX. How do you pronounce that?
UX. You just say UX. You don't say UX. Yeah, UX.
The Wizard of UX. I love that. So thank you so much for your time and energy, Rick. It was really a pleasure and great hooking up.
Absolutely.
And even though I'm going to hit the end broadcast button, I hope this never ends and we can keep talking forever and ever.
Yeah, it's been really fun to reconnect. We keep thinking we're going to come out to LA one of these days. My niece is living out there now, and she lives in Echo Park, around the corner from Courage Bagels. And my brother tells me I have to go to LA so I can try Courage Bagels.
Oh, where's your brother live?
He's in West Hartford, but his daughter's living just in Echo Park.
Oh, very cool. Yeah. Well, definitely you come out and we'll have a nice day in Venice Beach, and it's such a pleasure hooking up. Rick, thank you so much.
Take care, man.
Thank you so much.